Hey everybody, it's Onepeg. I have an addendum for all of you regarding the last lore video. In the last video, the one about the Borius, I told you we didn't know who attacked the Borius. I told you the mercenaries on that scientist's tape was a mystery, and that the rogues showing up on the ship was probably just them cleaning up after the fact. I was wrong. Not completely, but wrong enough that this is actually worth its own video because it blows some things even more wide open than I already had thought they were, and answers some crazy questions and raises some other parallels calling back to years-old missions that we had done, among other things. Because since that video came out, there was a comment that was written that I had to go and look into. I actually sat down and read a 4-page file that I somehow missed that mechanic hands you after you crack the C1 drives during the Icebreaker tasks list. All of it. And that document doesn't just fill a gap. It rewrites the beginning of this entire story. And it explains a faction we've been wondering about for years without ever knowing where they came from. Now, I'm going to expand on the rogues in another video, but for the purpose of this one, this shoring up is going to make a bunch of you go, whoa. Because that's what happened when I read it. So a quick recap, just so nobody's lost. The Borius questline starts with a distress signal. A nuclear icebreaker owned by Paradigm Shipping trapped in the Gulf of Finland with its crew missing. You board it. You fight through Black Division and a boss called Wedge. And deep in the lab on the boat, you find an audio tape from the last man alive, a sample storage supervisor named Grigory Altman. Altman says the ship was attacked by mercenaries in Tarkov's waters, that the attack damaged experimental sample containers, and that he sealed himself in to keep observing. That was the story. A ghost ship, an unnamed attacker, and a survivor talking into a recorder. Everything past that was theory, quote unquote. But the biggest theory, the one that a lot of you ended up leaving in comments, one person in particular, was that Knight and the Rogues did it. That the guys we were fighting on Lighthouse were the ones who took the ship down. But here's what the file actually says, titled Reports on the USEC Landing Operation in Tarkov. This is an operational log, dated entries running from late in one year into January of the next, documenting a covert USEC military landing on the Tarkov coast, and the operation has a code name that you already all know. Operation Firefly. Yeah, that Firefly. The achievement that's been sitting in this game for years with no explanation. The one you get the first time that you meet Lightkeeper. It was never random. It was seeding this moment. The name was a breadcrumb the entire time, and it took this Icebreaker story arc to find the payoff years later. The commenter who called this out, by the way, absolutely dead on. I have to give credit to where it was due. Thank you for showing me this. So what was Firefly? It was an invasion, a quiet one. Following an incident at the Terror Group main office in Tarkov, the Order goes out to prepare this operation. 3 ships are involved. The Pacific Axis, a container ship carrying the landing force, light vehicles, comms and surveillance gear, encryption equipment, fuel, and the muscle. A dozen LAV armored carriers, 5 M1128 fire support vehicles, 20 Tiger armored vehicles, and 300 USEC personnel. The second, the Cairo Nexus, is the sustainment ship. Ammunition, landmines, provisions, medical, generators, and watercraft, and 1,200 more personnel. Add this up, 1,500 people, plus armor, coming ashore in complete secret. This was never a smuggling run. It was a small army landing on the beach at the water treatment plant. And then there's the third ship, Eastern Energy. Eastern Energy's entire job was to lie. The log in this case is explicit. Eastern Energy moved into position and deliberately staged an emergency. That distress signal that they talked about, transmitted on a schedule, timed down to the minute, existed to pull the coastal civilian services and rescue response teams away from the landing zone so that 1,500 troops could come ashore with no one watching. Sit with that one. That distress signal the thing that starts the entire Borius quest line, is established in the game's own files as a Terra Group fabrication, a tool. And we'll get to how they did that, because that's actually worse than how it sounds. Now, the rogues. The log, in this case, names a reconnaissance team. Commander call sign, Knight. Death Knight. Death Knight mask, Knight. Knight's team deploys off the Pacific Axis, one of the 3 ships, lands on the Lighthouse Peninsula, and sets up an observation and communications post. Forward units secure water treatment facilities. That recon team takes up positions on the high ground nearby. The file literally calls the buildings the chalets, overlooking, watching the highway going into the city. Look at that. The water treatment plant, the chalets, the highway overwatch. That is exactly where the rogues live. There's the origin story. Knight and his men were a forward recon element of a USEC invasion of Tarkov, the tip of the spear for Operation Firefly, who landed, dug in on Lighthouse, and held those exact positions. When the wider operation fell apart and Tarkov collapsed into what it is now, they got stranded there, holding a beachhead for a war that never fully came, and then inevitably became the faction that we now know as the Rogues, that we've been fighting forever. That also quietly explains why Knight specifically is the one who turns up around the Borius later, either on the dock or on the boat or both. Why he's the goon carrying intel on the ship's position. He was there for the original operation. He's the one who cared enough to go back. So did the Rogues attack the Borius? Here's where I have to be honest. These files confirm the landing, and it confirms Knight. It confirms the Rogue's origin. What it doesn't do is say who attacked the Borius later. Firefly and the Borius incident are absolutely related. Same players, same waters, same corporation, but they're not stated to be the same event. Altman still only says mercenaries. Whether that's Knight's people acting later or Black Division showing up now, whether it's someone else entirely trying to get to those samples before Terra Group could, that document doesn't really close that loop. Now, because Knight knows how the next section that I'll talk about here in a second, how this all works, it is very possible he was able to triangulate the position of the Borius and just, as a soldier of fortune at this point, decided to grab some men and go and check it out. But at the moment, the reason why him and his guys are there just isn't something we know for sure just yet. Now, that's just the first couple of pages of this 4-page document. There's more. 2 more pages are stapled to this thing, and they're the reason it matters beyond just one ship. The first is a Terra Group project called Veil, the Vectorized Exo-Atmospheric Intelligence Lattice. It's an orbital satellite network, and it's finished. It provides coverage over the Northern Hemisphere and both American continents. Here's what Veil does. It intercepts signals, substitutes them, and here's the fun part. It can simulate transmissions from specific senders, including government agencies of entire countries. It can suppress communications across whole regions, and it's built to be nearly undetectable, partly by folding officially decommissioned satellites into the network so no one knows they're still up there. Yeah, so there's your staged distress signal. That's how Eastern Energy faked an emergency convincing enough to divert the Russian Coast Guard. That's potentially how the Borius signal reached your hideout radio in the first place. Terra Group can manufacture a cry for help out of thin air, and they've built the infrastructure to do it to any city on Earth. And then there's the last page, mostly redacted, but what's legible tells you Tarkov is not the endgame. Tarkov was a test, is a test, a repeatable protocol. Start a localized conflict, keep control of it, isolate a logistics hub, measure how the markets move, measure how NATO and the EU respond, and then field test experimental hardware while you do it. Item 115, for example, a blue ice catalyst, Terra Group lab compounds, the same category of thing Altman was storing on the Borius. And then there's a list of cities that read like Cairo, Istanbul, Rio, Tokyo, maybe Havana. All of the things that we all have been fighting and bleeding and dying repeatedly over was for a proof of concept. So, to recap and correct the record properly, Firefly wasn't just an achievement. It was a USEC front line making landfall. Knight is no longer a mystery boss. He's the recon commander who became the first rogue. The distress signal wasn't just a distress signal. It was bait, run through a satellite network built to fake exactly that. And the Borius, the boat, isn't really the core of the story. It's one leaked page out of a protocol Terra Group plans to run on the entire world. The one thing I won't pretend to know, though, is who actually put that ship where it is, disabled in the Gulf. That answer isn't in the files. Well, yet. Oh, and one other thing. Grigory Altman, if you end up actually helping him all the way through with the BTR driver, there's a section of quest text at the very end as you're pursuing the Savior ending, where the BTR driver comes back after a check-in on how he's doing to tell you that he went crazy. He's not necessarily dead, he's just missing. He had been slowly losing his mind due to exposure from these two compounds, which made him drive completely mad, and then he ended up disappearing into the woods. And now, with the Blackout event, some of that compound has found its way into the Terra Group underground lab, where Therapist is sending us on missions to go recover TGY blood samples. And shocker, Wedge and Black Division are once again showing up, cutting the power and causing chaos. So I guess there's another thing we get to dive into soon. I will say though, mystery compounds causing psychosis, driving people nuts, causing them to lose their mind and somewhat, I guess, flu-like symptoms? If that became contagious, it would sound an awful lot like zombies, right? And after all, in a few months, the fall will be here. Know what I mean?